And let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, guys, welcome to Nashik MuleSoft Meetup 7. And today's topic is related to healthcare. So, Ankur will be going to the speaker for today's meeting. And the topic is building FHIR application in the MongoDB using MuleSoft. So, Ankur will walk you through a complete use case, and it will also provide a live demonstration on that. And the session will take around 40 to 40 to complete the session. And finally there will be the trivia quiz at the end. So we will have a trivia quiz and we will going to select a three winners. Let me start with safe harbor statement. So both speaker and the host are organizing this meetup in their individual capacity. We are not representing any organization here. This presentation is strictly for learning purpose, and we are not holding any responsibility whether this solution will work for your, and the presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. Housekeeping: the required upload it to event page within 24 hours basically. So you can go to event page, you will find recording like presentation and all other things on the event page. 24 hours you can submit the question at any time. Just I enable the mic for everyone, so you can either you can ask the question, or you can definitely you can also type the question in the chat window. Try to make the session more and more interactive, and the feedback is very important for us for the future improvement, for future topic selection, or for future speaker selection basically. So please make sure you provide the feedback. At the end of the meetup you will be receiving a mail, and just click on that link and just provide the feedback. It will not take more than 1 or 2 minutes, that's it. So organizer, so just I will skip my introduction and Ankur will give the like introduction while speaker, as a speaker. Yeah. So Ankur, like you can take share your screen and take the session from here basically. I will just stop sharing.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me quickly share my screen and then we'll start. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. So hi everyone, this is Ankur, and I am a developer here in Bangalore, based out of Bangalore, and basically I'm a developer by day and a musician by night, which helps me in keeping my work-life balance and my stress in order, in under control. So today we are going to be talking on these following points. So first is what is FHIR and why to use it. Then why only MongoDB. Then we'll also talk about why MuleSoft and not any other technology. Then we'll have a look at uh, error handling that was implemented in the use case that I'm presenting today, and how correlation ID has been used in this customer journey. Then I'll also talk a little about the customer story for which this solution was developed, and then we are going to go through a live demo of everything. Okay. So FHIR, or it is basically called as FHIR. It stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. So it supports RESTful architecture, and it provides seamless exchange of information using messages documents. So it supports XML, JSON, and Turtle as the data transmission format. So in general use, JSON is preferred because it is easily everyone, even someone who is from a non-technical background can understand and can read and understand JSON format easily as compared to XML or Turtle. So since this FHIR is a standard, it provides a strong focus on implementation, and it is independent of any EHR vendor, health system, or any other organization. So it has been created as a standard, so it has to be used across all systems. There are a certain specific guidelines and rules which have to be followed across every system. Now, why MongoDB Atlas with FHIR? So the main reason, so there are a few reasons behind this. So MongoDB, first of all, is a fully managed cloud database, and the Atlas part of it handles all the complexity of deploying. Now, the main part why we are using MongoDB Atlas only is because it supports JSON format, and as we saw in the earlier slide, even FHIR supports JSON. And due to this cross compatibility, due to both the tools using the same format, it is very easy to transfer data between both of the platforms. So this is the main reason why we are using MongoDB Atlas. Now, someone might come in and ask why only MuleSoft and not any other technology, right? We can, like, there are a lot of different technologies. It can be developed in any other platform, and there are integration tools as well. So why only MuleSoft? So the very important point is that in last year in November, MuleSoft jumped into this healthcare sector, and it provided these connectors which are inbuilt for HL7 and for FHIR basically. So you can see we will have a look at a demo also, but here you can see these are the two connectors that MuleSoft is providing as of now, both for HL7. So HL7 is basically the organization, like you can say, it is the organization which takes care of FHIR. So earlier, the FHIR format used to was called as HL7. Now it is called as FHIR, FHIR. So these are the two connectors on the right hand side of the screen that you can see. They are provided by MuleSoft. Also, I think a lot of you would be already aware that MuleSoft also provide these connectors, these functionalities for MongoDB. So all these different functionalities are a part of MongoDB, and these are simply just drag and drop, and you need to do a little bit of configuration, and then you're good to go. So it can work on a simple request response mechanism where a user or any healthcare application can send a request to MuleSoft and then get the data in any format that they want. Now, error handling in MuleSoft. So the use case that we were working on, it required that the processing should be stopped in case there is any error while converting one data format to another data format and saving it in MongoDB. So since this is healthcare data, we had to be pretty sure that there is no incorrect data ever goes inside MongoDB, because that healthcare data might be related to any person, any organization, any medicine. So we need to make sure that no incorrect data goes into MongoDB format. And as of now, there is no correct validation in case something is failing while the conversion. So if there was any error, we decided to stop everything and not do anything until until the error in the input data is fixed. So for that reason, we looked into on a propagate, where like everything is stopped and the error is rethrown up to the next level and handled there. Okay, so now moving on to how we use correlation ID along with all this use case that we have just seen. So let's say, okay, so first let's see what is correlation ID. So correlation ID is basically a common identifier which is sent out along with all requests, messages, and responses in each transactions. So it basically helps when you're looking at the logs and you want to see how one request has gone from one step to another. So it makes everything easier. So you can see everything based on only this correlation ID. So if you look at the screenshot on the right side of the screen, this one. So let's say a patient has to book an appointment for getting some tests done through an hospital, maybe a blood test or anything. It can be anything. So once that patient sends a request, let's assume that one request goes to an API which is actually doing the booking, which is actually scheduling your appointment. Then another route goes to the payment API where you're going to make any payment. So now the same correlation ID, which is there in my first message, in my original message, gets carry forwarded to both appointment scheduling and payment or invoicing, to both of them. So in case there is any error, I can easily track that error using the correlation ID, which is being sent to both the requests. So if you look at the screenshot on the bottom of your screen, you can see. Uh, so there are a lot of tools where you can filter your logs using correlation ID, and you can catch these issues. So it is going to trace back the steps using this correlation ID, and you will be able to figure out what is going wrong and where the things are going wrong. Now, moving on to the customer story. So this part is again going to talk about why just MuleSoft. So we had a customer that they have been working in HL7 formatted data since a very long time. And as of now, there is like, when we were doing this development at that time, there was no inbuilt functionality or any other type of libraries available in any other language that could easily do conversion of the older data format into the newer data formats, like HL7 to FHIR conversion. So we started by looking into Java, but then there are not no inbuilt libraries which can help with this. So to build something from scratch would have needed extensive research and development and testing, and then any changes in the FHIR standard, we would have to implement those changes in our system as well. So we suggested, why not use MuleSoft instead of it, right? So MuleSoft, because it already provides connector, and these connectors are already compliant with FHIR standards. And in case there are any future changes, those changes will be handled by the MuleSoft team and will be provided in the upgraded versions of those connectors. So this was one of the main selling points of why MuleSoft was suggested to our customer. Then then our customer was also looking for various ways to store fire data. So one of the repositories called Smile CDR. It's a third party repository, and you have to pay for everything that you're doing. So we suggested, why not use MongoDB, since the data, like, we want to keep the data and everything in under our control. So why not use MongoDB Atlas? So that is why we thought that let's not go towards Smile CDR and look into MongoDB. Okay, now let's have a look at live demo. Let me quickly reshare my screen so that we go to the live demo part. Entire screen. Okay, let me know if you can still see my screen. Okay, so this is the website for HL7 FHIR. So the latest release going on is release 4B. So I have mentioned these links and everything in my presentation. So if you guys want to have a look at it later, you can find these links here. So this is the FHIR HL7 FHIR website, and you can get all the details, everything from here. So let's first talk about the resource types. So what they have done, HL7, what they have done is they have divided everything into category, and everything is mentioned here as per when and where they take place in an hospital. So for example, let's take an example of a patient. So so you can see everything has been categorized. So first is individuals, then entities, which covers all, then entities for any substance, biologically derived products. So this is basically for when any tests or anything takes place. Then we have workflows for appointment scheduling and finding slots and all those things. Similarly, we have details for everything like allergy, like everything, anything that you can think of, there is a standard set for that. So few resources, few resources have N. So these are normative content. So that there will be no further changes in these resources. Rest of the resources can change. Like it is not necessary that they will change, but rest of the resources can change with any future versions if they come out. So first, let's have a look at the patient resource. So when you go to this patient resource, you will be able to see the scope and usage. So it very clearly it mentions when to use a patient resource, and so it covers all these things: curative activities, psychiatric care, social services, pregnancy care, nursing and assisted living, dietary services, and tracking of personal health and exercise data. Also, it provides a complete structure of what all fields have to be mentioned here in your data. So you can see this is the entire structure, and everything on the right hand side mentions the rules. What are the rules, how to use that specific field. You can also have a look at the same thing in XML format. You can have a look at it in JSON format, turtle, and then like if you want to see all the details. So first let's talk about JSON format here. Okay. So see, you can see all the details like resource type, identifier, name, and how to use all those things. So everything has been mentioned here. So if we'll have a look at an actual example of the patient resource as well later. Okay. So for anything, any rules, anything that you want to see, any examples that you want to see, you can simply come to this website and have a look at it. Does not require any login, anything, nothing is required here. Okay. Now for Atlas, for MongoDB Atlas, I'm using this MongoDB Compass tool, and I have created a cluster, and this is the data set that I have. This is the data set that I have created from one of the acknowledgement messages from FHIR, from HL7 FHIR. So we'll have a look at those formats as well. So you can see it is you can see this data in format like in as an object. Also, you can see it in form of JSON as well, and the best part, you can see it in tabular form. So now this is the main advantage. So if I let's go back here to this patient resource. Okay, let me go back. So if I want to store this JSON data somewhere in my MongoDB, I can very easily just add data. Like for demo purposes, we can just simply insert document, insert file, whatever. It is in the JSON format, so we don't have to do anything. We don't have to make any changes. It will directly get inserted. And then we will be able to see everything in a tabular format. Okay. Now moving to MuleSoft. Okay, let's first have a look at the connectors. So this is how the connectors look like in actual HL7 EDI it is called. You can find it on Exchange. It is available very easily. And right now it provides read and write functionality. So I have implemented both of them, read and write. Let me quickly, okay, is it running? Let me stop it. Clean the project and let's, come on. Okay, let's try to run this once again. No, it does not want to run, it seems. Okay, so what I'll be doing for this demo purpose is that I'm using a simple listener, nothing more. It is a simple request response mechanism, and I'll be sending request through Postman. Before that, let's quickly also have a look at both these FHIR and HL7 formats. So this is one of the messages in HL7 format. So as you can see, it is not that readable. Anyone, let's say anyone in a hospital wants to read and understand this data, that person might not be very technical. So it becomes a little difficult to understand and read this line of data. So when we transform it into FHIR formatted data, it becomes a little easier to read this data, a little easier to understand what each field is trying to say. Let's go back again here. No, just give me a minute. What's happening? Project. Let's restart this. So, in the meanwhile, if someone has any questions, you can throw them towards me, and I'll try my best to answer them.
Yeah, Ankur, there are a few questions in the chat window. Could you please?
Okay, let me go to the chat window. Okay, correlation ID and transaction ID serve the same purpose. Um, I think yes, in a way, yes, both of them serve the same purpose, but correlation ID flows throughout your entire MuleSoft flow. So, for example, if you are implementing JSON loggers, you can mention correlation ID there, flow through your entire flow. What is the purpose of event IDs? Is client ID and event ID both same? Okay, I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly, but client ID is something that is used for authentication, right? Manoj, if you can provide some clarity, like what are you looking for? So basically, like client ID, client secret is something that you use for authentication. So an event ID is something else. Okay, let's move on. When you say FHIR, you actually mean a standard which your healthcare client adopted. So basically, FHIR is a standard which is adopted by every healthcare organization, not by any specific client. It is a standard across healthcare domain. So this is something that is used everywhere by everyone. Like it can be a hospital where you go for any appointments or any doctor visit. It can be any organization doing clinical trials. So let's say any organization, uh, okay, let's take an example of the corona vaccination. So when that came out, even the organizations doing clinical trials for corona vaccination, they had to follow all these HL7 and FHIR formats. So this is a standard which is followed by everywhere in healthcare sector, not specific to any client. I hope that answers your question. It's industry standard to exchange the data between providers and yeah, correct. It's an industry standard. So it is used everywhere, not for any specific client or any. Okay, so
Hey,
let's
Ankur, sorry, quick question.
yes, go ahead.
Is this being adapted in the Indian healthcare system right now? Because I know it's been using in the US
Okay,
across.
so mhm. so okay, so in India, it has not become a standard as of now. But yes, that being said, so India has very recently launched something called as ABHA, ABHA. So in that, so that is ABHA is basically our version of the standard, like our version of healthcare data monitoring system. So even that somewhat is following this HL7 formatted data, because data transmission, when it comes to healthcare sector data transmission, what I believe is it should remain standardized across the globe, right? So I think you can read a little bit more about ABHA.
Yeah, I could see that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Yes.
Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. Perfect.
Correct. Yes, Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. So this is something that has very recently come in. I think beginning of this year or maybe December
Yeah,
last year.
January 2022. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that becomes
yeah,
standard. Yeah.
beginning of this year.
Hmm.
So this is something that is really interesting going on right now in India, and probably if there are any Indian healthcare organization, they might want to look into this ABHA, and then probably we will have something about it in MuleSoft as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. What?
Ankur,
Okay.
again, away here. So what you said, it's an health industry standard. So when you're saying it is accepted across the globe, US, Europe, all those countries they follow it. US, I heard. Europe is also same. They also follow the same standard.
Uh, okay. So as far as I know, yes. So this actually started from US, but now this is accepted. Like this is being accepted by other countries as well.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to relate it with is the same, the old EDFACT formats, right? Wherein we said NCX has a huge acceptance in US, right?
Hmm.
And
Correct.
you had other formats which were maybe Europe accepted.
Correct. So yes. So this is actually a modified or a newer version of all those older data formats that we used to have.
Mhm. Okay, thanks.
Okay. And yes, the acceptance has started in other countries as well, just because it is very easy to understand and read, like it increases readability, etc.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can I add one thing?
Yes, please. Sure.
Uh,
Yes.
Normally, every country have their own standards. Reason being, it is a very sensitive data, so patient data will not be or cannot be or should not be exchanged outside of their jurisdiction. So they are coming up with their own standards. Yes, probably the HL7 they can take some flavors and they can add their own and they can come up with their own terminology.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Uh, okay. In the meanwhile, let's also have a little bit of look at what we like, the MongoDB part of it, because apparently my Anypoint Studio doesn't want to work today. Okay. So, um, so you can see on the right hand side there are a lot of different connectors already available for MongoDB. So what I have done, it's a very simple configuration connection string, and just only using that connection string, I'm trying to connect to my MongoDB. There are obviously other ways also to connect, where you can like this is I would say this is not the best way to do to mention and the entire connection string here, but then yes, for the demo purposes we are going to use the same thing, and it just needs a simple configuration, and that's it. Then you can select what is your collection name. Then there is one option for fields also, so if you want you can mention the name here, or if you want all the fields you can just mention a simple comma. That should give you all the fields. Similarly, we have a lot of operations here. Like so, if we have time, yes, we do have. We can have a look at a bunch of them that I've already implemented once this starts working. So this HL7, okay, so HL7 write, this uses a connector configuration. So let's have a look at the sources. Uh, Before that, let's also have a look here, exchange. Hang on, what is? Mm, so all these implementations and everything that we have talked about. So we have a connector called Accelerate Healthcare Config module, or you can have a look at MuleSoft Accelerator for Healthcare. So it provides everything, all the use cases that it covers: patient 360, CMS interoperability, labs integration. So patient 360, basically it's like storing everything related to a patient in one place. Then CMS interoperability talks about how multiple systems can interact with each other. Then labs integration basically just talks about if a patient goes to a hospital or to a lab to get some test done, how is that linked to the patient, and how are all the reports linked to the patient. Then appointment scheduling is one of the very important part here, that if you have a doctor's appointment, how you can book your appointment, how is it linked to the patient, how it is linked to a doctor, a hospital, like how everything is interlinked between each other. Then it also talks about benefit and eligibility verification, where it talks about insurance. So if a patient has any insurance, all those details can be mentioned here, like insurance coverage, what kind of insurance coverage is available for a particular patient. Then if any prior authorization is required before you can attend a patient or before you can go to a doctor, all those things. Then all these connectors, converters, they are also aware, they are also available here. They have also added X12 to FHIR, then CCDA to FHIR, and obviously setup instructions, release note, all those things. So you can find all those details here. It is available very easily in the exchange. It's called MuleSoft Accelerator for Healthcare. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so it got deployed. So these read and write, HL7 read and write connectors basically help me in converting this kind of data. Like if I send this request, it helps me in converting this type of data into JSON format, which makes it more readable. It also, if I want to do the same thing the other way around, which does not happen very often, but yes, it still provides me the option to convert JSON data into HL7 data. So for example, this is actually one acknowledgement message that comes through, which I'm using as an example here, right? So now once I have converted my HL7 data into JSON format, um, I can do whatever transformation. If I have to do any transformation on any other thing, if I directly want to store it into my MongoDB, I can directly do all those things from here. So we have a few details, like we have a few implementations. So let's say, okay, so this is specific to MongoDB, right? Let's have a look first. Let's have a look here. So let's say I want to get some patient data. So for the demo purpose, I have just used the name, but then there definitely will be some unique identifier for every patient that we should be ideally using. So what I have done is it's just a find documents part where I'm sending my input query in case in as a parameter where name is equals to Ankur, and it should be able to fetch all the details from my MongoDB database here. So now you can also see that I have implemented JSON loggers. So JSON loggers basically are going, so just it does not require a lot of configuration. It does not require anything specific. You can just mention your application name, application version, environment. So these things should ideally come from your properties file, like configuration. um, so how this JSON logger helps is, okay, so how this JSON logger helps is, once you have the configuration set up, you can have a message, then what content you want for that message. And the main point is this trace point. So this trace point basically gives you an option of where you have put your JSON logger. So is it after a request or after a transformation, or maybe before request, before transformations, all these things. By default the value is start, which is like start of the flow, and you can use it anywhere, and it just makes things easier to read. Let me see if I have any sample. Mm, Probably not. Let me not. Okay, let's go to the console and see. Okay, so now when I ran the integration, let me copy this log somewhere. Copy, paste. Okay. So you can see we have correlation ID flowing throughout all the steps of my flow, the same correlation ID. So this is what we discussed, that if there are multiple paths, we can have a trace of everything using this correlation ID. Also, if you want, using these JSON loggers, they have an option. If you want to configure your correlation ID in some way, you can achieve that as well here. If you want any specific format, if you want any specific type of correlation ID, you can do that as well using these JSON loggers. So it basically makes everything easier to track. That's it. So you can see the correlation ID, and I have okay. So after the request, then before transformation. So before transformation, then after the transformation. So all these things. So let's have a look at the details here also. So here the trace point is after request, because I just made a request to MongoDB, and then after request, then I can add a JSON logger which says before transform, and then one which says after transform. So it just makes everything a little easier to implement, easier to see in the logs. Yeah. Similarly, we have other operations. Let's say someone wants to count the number of documents. So I have, again, same MongoDB configuration, same collection name that I've been using, and that's it. And when I go here, I don't need to pass anything. I'm not passing anything. It is just my uh, get request. Let me hide these auto generated so that you can see there are no specific headers, nothing. And when I send this request, it is going to tell that there are 6 records. Right? Then if I want to insert, let's say I want to insert some data. So in my body, I have mentioned a JSON type of data. And if I want, I can insert the same data. So it says 200. Okay. Now if I send the count should ideally increase. So yes, see, the count has increased to 7. That means the data has been added. Now if I send the same request again, it is going to again add the data. If I check the count, now it should be 8. So let's have a look at MongoDB, what has happened. Let me refresh the data. So you can see the name Do has been added 3 times here, but the ID has changed every time. So this is a auto generated field which MongoDB has automatically added, although my data is same, but the ID is different. So this is how we can identify data. So if I have to find something, ideally it should not be based on name, it should be based on a unique identifier, which in this case is ID. Or it can be a combination of, like, let's say first name, last name, and location, or any kind of combination, composite primary keys, something of that sort. Okay, so yeah, that brings us to the end of the demo. Let me go back to the presentation. Okay, now in this presentation on the end you can find a few links. So the first link is going to take you to FHIR resources website that we just saw all the resources. Then I have also checked in my code that we just saw on GitHub. So in case you want any reference from anywhere, you can visit this link and have a look at it. And the last one is MongoDB Atlas link, like the cloud version of MongoDB. So you can have a look at all those details there also. And that is it. If you guys have any question, please feel free to write them in the chat window, or you can just mention them here out and we'll try to answer them.
Yeah, thanks Ankur for the session. So it was a great session. So yeah, if anybody doesn't have any question, then we can start with trivia quiz quickly.
Yeah,
So we
I think there are two questions. Let me I'll just answer them quickly. So okay, so first one says, do we have any operation to validate HL7 schema for incoming message writing? So as of now, no, there is no validation available for HL7 schema, but yes, so you can specify what kind of data, what kind of transformation you are trying to do, and based on that, so these connectors based on that can throw in error. So let's say my HL7 formatted file is incorrect, and in my configuration I have set up that I'm expecting this type of data. So if that is incorrect, then there can be a validation, but there is no inbuilt MuleSoft validation as of now. Knowing it's mostly confidential data, does these connectors provide option to encrypt data in transit? Let's see. Okay, so these connectors, uh, they out of the box, they do not provide any mechanism to encrypt data. But yes, in general, I think in MuleSoft you can secure your data.
Ankur, again, when you say secure your data, see, normally we talk about two securities, right? One is in transit, which we know you'll be definitely using HTTPS there.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the data in transit. And now, if you're sending a patient's detail, right, and which is kind of confidential, and your data in transit is not encrypted, there's always a risk of the data, if by any chance gets theft, right?
Yeah.
We have
Correct, correct. I got it. Yes. So okay, so what happens is that these connectors, they provide. Okay, so as of now, they provide character encoding.
Mhm.
So maybe that is something that can be used. I'm not very sure if there is a way where we can, we can encrypt data in transit.
Yeah, because see, even if connector, it has to be on both the sides, right? If I am
Correct.
sending an encrypted data, then
Mhm.
MongoDB would have to decrypt it before saving it,
Yes, correct.
right? And certainly DBs like this, they have their own ways to encrypt data once the data lands in there, but that is again
Mhm.
data at rest.
Correct, correct. So I think maybe a good way to do this would be not on the MongoDB part, but maybe in MuleSoft part. I'm not sure. I'm just thinking. I'm just trying to think.
Ankur,
I'm just trying to think. Yes, please.
can I pitch in?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yes,
Yeah. So,
definitely.
see, there are a couple of things here. So, when we develop an application, we normally store the data as is because it will be within our own network. Okay.
Correct.
Now, provided we always use certificates to make sure the data in transit is always in a secure way.
Correct.
Now, when you want to transfer from our system to a different system, let's say, for example, from laboratory data to hospital, right? Those two are two different networks. So,
Correct.
in that scenario, we can redact the information. Okay, if you see that apart from HTTPS, all the 506 certifications, okay, so we can redact. The question is, if the payload size is now hundreds, thousands of lines of code, data reduction will definitely have an advantage. Obviously, it will lead you to convert. Encrypt, decrypt, then decrypt to encrypt. Okay, I mean reverse. Sorry, decrypt to encrypt, then encrypt to decrypt. Okay, so yes, the point is, what are the things you need to encrypt that we can definitely use data reduction? We have a bit of core libraries, crypto libraries, or we can use it.
Okay, thanks, Shiva.
Yep, thank you. So yeah, if there are no more questions, then Jackie, back to you. We can move to trivia questions.
Yeah, so thanks Ankur and thanks Siva for your inputs. Thank you so much. Okay, so I can quickly start with trivia quiz. So just give me a second.
Jackie will touch base with you after this.
Sure, sure. Okay, can I share my screen? So just let me know once you can see my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Okay. So guys, like you can go to www.kaut.it and just game pin is this. You can start. So I will giving a 2 minutes for everyone to get into the couch.